Hello, everybody. This is Martha Hines with Living the One Light. Today, this is going to be very fun. I am with Sheridan Semple and Cayelin Castell, and we are going to be they're going to be sharing about Venus Alchemy, which is a co-creation or a co-creative endeavor that Sheridan and Cayelin do together. And I asked Cayelin and Sheridan if they would like to be interviewed because, well, partly selfishly, so that I can learn more about Venus Alchemy and all of the amazing things that you guys do. And also just because I really like each of you and I really resonate with you on a deep level. And I want to help more people know who you are and find you. And I really love to get to know and promote people who are feeling very much in integrity and grounded and coming truly from the heart, which I feel with both of you. So thank you so much for agreeing to do the interview.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, just briefly, I didn't even introduce you guys at all, but I'll just say briefly, you're both astrologers. You both do shamanic astrology specifically, which is a different version of astrology than I have been trained in. I'm trained more in the evolutionary astrology side of things. But for people who are listening, maybe who also are trained more in the evolutionary astrology side of things, for me, this shamanic astrology and what we're going to talk about today is such a huge addition to what I have been trained in and what I know. And so I feel on a very deep level a call for me to understand more deeply, you know, what it is we're about to talk about today. And yeah, so that's another aspect of why I've called you guys together with me. And so maybe we could just start with, what is Venus Alchemy and how did that come about?
I'm just delighted you asked that question. So, so Venus Alchemy started in 2014, but really its roots go back probably to ancient times when ancient cultures were working with the Venus cycle, and they created their different ways of working with the Venus cycle through stories. And so the story of Inanna and Ishtar really informs our work with the Venus cycle, because those stories literally describe the journey of the Venus through the sky, and as an initiation, as a process that we can engage ceremonially to, and it's life changing. Just to say, it's life changing to be able to do that. So so it goes way back, and I was literally introduced to the whole concept of the Venus cycle back in the mid 90s when Daniel Jamario, who created the shamanic astrology paradigm, was researching the Venus cycle. And we were starting to share about it in the groups that we were doing back then. We'd go out to the Chiricahuas, do these camping trips out to the Chiricahuas kind of thing. And I remember sitting there and having these, and we were just beginning to understand the Venus cycle then. And I remember him talking about, so Venus in the morning sky is, it's like in the story of Inanna, she's releasing any distortions connected with each of the gates. When Venus and the moon come together, it represents a chakra gate, and she's making this descent down into the underworld. She's letting go of who she thinks she is. She's going to die, then she's going to be reborn into who she truly is, and she's going to emerge into the evening sky, and she's going to go back through these conjunctions with the moon and reclaim everything that she left, but now without the distortions. And he was describing this at one point. And I was like, oh wait, Venus is meeting with the moon in the morning sky. It's a waning moon. The moon is releasing light. Venus is releasing her vestments. And then in the evening sky, Venus is meeting with the moon, gaining light, and she's regaining her vestments in the story of Inanna or Ishtar. For those who want to go more deeply into that, we have stuff on our website that can, help you with that. But the and so it's like how perfect. I mean, it's like it's so thought it's like whoever sort of designed this whole thing, whatever, pure source energy, brilliance, whatever it was that was designing how Venus moves through the sky and this story works, and the story of releasing and letting go, and the story of reclaiming, and really stepping into the strength and power of who we truly are. That's the what the Sumerians and the Babylonians were doing when they were working with the Venus cycle, and they worked with it as a ceremony. So I have done that. I had done that just in my own personal life. I learned about this cycle. And at that time, we didn't realize it was a whole 19-month cycle. We didn't realize that it's like we knew that Venus would come back near the birthday, but we didn't really recognize how to work with it in a ceremonial way the whole way through. And it just so happened I was going through a priestess process, learning how to do ceremony, remembering more accurately said, remembering how to do ceremony, and that as I was completing that process, I was turning 40 and I was completing the Venus return. But I can say that now, looking back. But it was so significant. I was like, oh my gosh, that was an initiation. And we often say the age 40 Venus return is one of the significant returns of a person's life, and all of them are significant. But this one is, there's 5 Venus cycles every 8 years. It takes 19 months for Venus to go through one cycle. So 5 cycles every 8 years, 5 times 8 is 40. Venus is also retrograde about 40 days. So that number 40 is very significant. Um, and then 48, 56, 60, you can keep going on up to 96, 104. I mean, it's like how long we might live, how many Venus returns we might have, but every 8 years that's going to be happening. So back in 2014, actually it was the end of 2013, I was asked to teach the synodic cycles of Venus, Mars, and Mercury to a group, and teach someone how to teach these cycles. And that was Tammy Brunk. And I said yes, but my whole body was like, no,
Wow.
don't want to do this. And I didn't really quite understand what that was all about. I was just like, okay, fine. So we set everything up to teach, to do this 5-day event, where people could learn all about the different synodic cycles, and Venus, Mars, and Mercury. And oh, by the way, just to say, synodic means with the sun. So when Venus returns to the same relationship with the sun, now that may be a conjunction. We don't really see those, but it's also like if she's rising up as morning star, or she's connected to the moon at near the birthday, or whatever that is. But it's with the sun. It's when Venus comes back to the same relationship with the sun, and that happens every 8 years. So I remember we had an early registration sign up thing, and nobody signed up. And even though we had everything all laid out and set up, and I said to Tammy, I'm so sorry, I think it's me. I just don't have any energy for this. I don't really want to do it. I said, and as I was telling her that, because I was feeling kind of guilty, like, it's my fault. I said, well, maybe if we thought about this in a different way, maybe if we took people through the Venus cycle as a ceremony, and they really understood what it was. Because if you say synodic cycles, people just like, what? What does that mean? I don't get it. So if we made it something that could be personal and enlivened and so on, then people would maybe want to come to a live event. So we kind of played around with it a little bit. We went from like 0 to 60 or 65 in like 3 weeks. We decided to do the event, and to do it in real time as the things were happening, as a ceremony, and that it would, we would do the whole 19-month cycle. And so we had 3 weeks before we had to do the first class, because the first gate was going to happen. This was in the first gate happened in February of 2014, and we had 65 people sign up.
Wow.
Really fast. I know. It was like the energy, Because I got lit up. I was so excited about this. I'm like, this is what I want to do. This
Mm,
is how I want to do it. This has energy. And even as I'm talking about it, I'm like, I can feel the life force just whooshing through my body. Like,
I can feel it too. Yes. Mhm.
and by the time we completed that cycle, we had over 100 people. I mean, we
What?
really didn't have much time to promote it, so we kept promoting it, and more people kept signing up, and so many people loved what we were doing, and we had so much energy and enthusiasm for this process. And they said, "You're going to do the rest of these, right?" Because we were just thinking we were going to do it one time. We weren't. I mean, we hadn't planned very far ahead. We just like, oh, it's like in the moment we're doing this, and we made it happen kind of spontaneously. And so we're like, oh, do the rest of, because there's 5 cycles every 8 years. So it's like, and we want to know, and we focused on the specific cycle, the expression of the feminine that was being initiated on the world stage in um, in 2014 was Capricorn. It's also happening now in 2022, same
Mhm.
cycle. So we focused what is the expression of the feminine through the Capricorn mysteries, the wise woman, the grandmothers, the we really brought in the circle of grandmothers and all these. So they wanted to know what all the different other cycles were going to be like, and how what would we do with those as well. So we decided to continue, and so we didn't call it Venus Alchemy at the moment. What happened was when we first started, we didn't even have a website. It's like Tammy had her website, I had my website, and we just kind of split things up between our two websites. It's like, I mean, really in on the fly, in the moment. And so then we finally realized we needed a website. And I'm like, what are we going to call it? And I was like playing with names, and I had like brainstormed a bunch. And my favorite one was Venus Alchemy, but I didn't think it would be available. So I went and I had my husband's creates websites, thankfully. So he went and looked it up, and it was available. I was like, oh my God, that's a sign from the universe.
Mhm.
Like, and what I didn't know at the time and found out later when I did a search was that somebody had had that URL years before, and they had let it go for whatever reason. And you can go back to the Wayback Machine and see whatever it was that they were doing. And but it was ours. It was ours to have, because
Wow.
it so just sums up everything in what it is that we're doing, working with the Venus cycle, creating the alchemy, so that what and in that sense of community and working the with intention together, it's so supportive. It's like people find it life changing. And me, I anytime I've worked with the Venus cycle, either on my own or now the last 8 years in Venus Alchemy, um, it continues. It's just like layer after layer of these alchemical changes that keep taking place. That is just so exciting. So I'm going to turn this over to Sheridan in just a moment, but just to say that after 8 years, Tammy felt like she was done. We'd done the whole thing, and she was ready to go on to do other things. And so I'm like, who would I invite to join with me?
And interestingly, that was a Venus
Right, one whole
cycle.
complete Venus
Yeah.
round. Yeah, coming
Wow.
back to the starting place, yes.
Mhm.
And I thought about Sheridan, and so I reached out to her and I said, "Would you be interested? Could you possibly be interested in wanting to do this with me?" And she was like, "Oh yes."
Awesome.
Wholehearted, full on. I am so present and ready to jump into this. And she's been amazing. I love
Oh,
working with her. I loved working with Tammy too, but I also love now working with Sheridan, and she brings a whole new dimension and understanding and energy into it all. So now go for it, Sheridan.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I'll just say, for people on my YouTube channel, I have an interview with Sheridan about the Venus cycle. So, um, yeah, and it's a beautiful, wonderful interview. I mean, you did such a great job outlining it. I was a total newbie to the topic. And so for people wanting to just understand the Venus cycle itself, obviously they can go to your stuff, but
Well,
you,
and
yeah.
you could put a link to that
Oh, yeah,
in the show notes so people
absolutely.
can
Yeah,
watch
I'll do that.
that. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, because it
Cool.
was really, it helped me understand the Venus cycle so much better. I still have a lot to learn, but it was really wonderful. Yeah. So Sheridan, I would love to, I mean, say anything you want following Cayelin, but you could start to give your own journey with this Venus cycle and why it matters to you, and why did you say that amazing yes to Cayelin? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so basically my Venus journey started with Cayelin and Tammy. I'd always studied astrology very informally since I was a kid. My mom was really into astrology, and I kind of got this like download one day walking by the river of like, wow, it's time to start studying it more formally. I didn't have any intention of becoming an astrologer or anything, but you listen to the downloads and you follow what they say. And so that afternoon, a client and I'd been kind of looking around. I started looking around at things, and I had a client come in, and I mentioned it to her. And she said, oh, I had a reading with this guy, Daniel, years ago. You should check out what he does. And so I got online. I found the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School and just kind of started following and was interested. And, a lot of it was a little bit more advanced than where I was at. So I wasn't just like fully plugging in yet, but there's something very intriguing. And then Tammy and Cayelin did a free webinar on the underworld, right before the Libra cycle started. And all of a sudden I realized like my Venus signature, I was born when Venus was in the underworld, and everything they said, it just all of a sudden it was like all the blocks just fell into place of like my whole entire life experience, right? It just validated my whole experience in such a profound way. And I was like, oh yeah. And I like signed up for my first class, I was like, this is it. I'm all in on this, right? And so Venus Alchemy has, going through the cycles with you, it's such a profound way for me and for others to tune back into much more consciously that divine feminine aspect, right? That's the aspect that's just been so pushed down. It's been so, dumped into the underworld. Has been so pushed into the shadow to the point where we like think the shadow is bad, right? We've just made the divine feminine this negative thing in our push towards the masculine, right? For so many years. And we know this, right? We all know this. We all want it to change, but how do we go about that change? And so for me, Venus Alchemy really provided that path, that opportunity for me to like just consciously keep tuning into that. What does that mean? Empowering that energy, just keep giving it more juice, giving it more love, bringing it more and more online, because no matter how we identify, we've all been at the mercy of what's been happening, and we all prop it up and like keep it going in certain ways because we're just ignorant, or we don't realize, or we haven't become aware yet, right? And we will continue to become more aware and make those changes as we go through life, right? So for me, that tuning in and being able to go outside and connect with Venus in the sky, with the moon coming around, what's happening, the other planets, the stars that are around Venus at that time, all of that has just been a way to step back into my ancestral roots, all of our ancestral roots, when we all sat outside and watched the Venus cycle, because that's what we did every night and every morning. Was we looked outside and we communed with the earth and with the sky, because was our life. That's how we did that, right? And so tuning back into that, it's like it anchors me into that whole lineage, right? That Cayelin was talking about, like the story of Inanna and Ishtar, right? The story of Inanna is like the first written story we have on those clay cuneiform tablets, right? Literally following the Venus cycle. So it's like that was in like 2500 BCE-ish, right? So it's like this is something that we've been doing, at least we know about since then, right? And then obviously for as long as we've been humans before that, right? So it taps us into that place when we still revered the feminine, when we were still empowered in the feminine, when we still worshiped and honored the feminine and all of her aspects. It brings us into that, and it starts to like open that up inside. And that has been my experience with it. So when I got the email from Cayelin saying, she's interested in maybe doing something together, I thought, oh, she's going to want, I do a lot of aromatherapy with the astrology and plant medicine. And I thought, oh, she's going to want to collaborate with something like that, And so when she said Venus Alchemy, I mean, it like blew my mind. And I was just like, yes, 100 times yes, for sure. Because it's been a life-changing experience for me as a woman, as a human, to follow the Venus cycle, and will continue to be that way going forward for the rest of my life, for sure. Absolutely. So it's a powerful journey to be connected to that consciously on a daily or near daily basis, working with that in ceremony, awareness, consciousness, all those pieces, parts. And for me to have that validation of the underworld piece was just like, it was a total game changer in my life and made everything be okay. It's like I've gone through these really heavy, intense things, but it's been part of my soul's evolutionary journey. I can totally get behind that. And it really just started to shift how I was experiencing and perceiving and understanding my life. So
can you say a little more about this for people who don't know what Venus in the underworld is? Could you give just a teeny brief summary of that and say a little more, how did that change your life? Like,
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So when Cayelin was talking about that 19-month cycle, right, that Venus goes through repeatedly every 19 months, that synodic cycle where Venus comes back to the same relationship with the sun. For us, it starts when Venus rises in the morning sky. That's the beginning of the journey. And then she travels through the morning sky. And every month, the moon, the crescent moon comes around and conjoins, becomes close to Venus in the sky. Those are the chakra gates, right? So that Cayelin was talking about, we move through, going through all the chakra gates. Then Venus moves closer and closer to the sun until one day, right, here we are in our ancestral selves. We've been watching Venus. I'm facing the east in my office right now, so so we're watching every morning. We go out to do our, worship the sun. Thank you so much for coming back. The light, and we see Venus in the morning sky for months and months and months and months. And then all of a sudden she's getting closer to the dawn, and then she disappears and we can't see her anymore, right? That would be a significant thing that would happen for us. We would notice that. It would be huge. And that is when ancient people would say that Venus has gone into the underworld, right? Because she's gone below the horizon where like the sun sets, where the sun goes to the underworld every night before it rises in the eastern horizon in the morning, right? So when Venus becomes hidden in the beams, the light, the rays of the sun, that's when Venus is in the underworld. Same thing for Mars or Mercury, right? Venus isn't the only planet that goes into the underworld, but that's what we're talking about. And so that's when you can't see Venus. And it's approximately when Venus is about 10 degrees away from the sun, she's gone into the underworld. It varies a little depending upon your location and your horizon line view. But that's when Venus travels with the sun. And in this particular one, it's on the far side of the sun. But Venus can also pass between us and the sun. That's a shorter underworld. So Venus gets these two underworld phases. Then she rises in the evening sky. You see her after the sunset. And all of a sudden, right, we haven't seen Venus. And then boom, she's there one day, right? This is big, significant. I mean, it would be like something we would spend time worshiping and in ceremony, right? And that's what we're doing in Venus Alchemy. And so for me, learning that Venus was in the underworld when I was born, along with Mars, really helped for me to understand, the underworld journey is one of transformation, surrender, that shamanic death and rebirth, right? So the divine feminine is going through that now. Venus has just moved into the underworld. So for me to understand that part of my soul's journey is through this underworld experience, right? That's my teacher, is the underworld. And that's usually like deep feeling, really getting into feeling, having to surrender. It can be challenging things that are ultimately guiding me towards more empowerment, right? Because every time we like turn and face something that we are denying or trying to bury under a rock or hide away from everyone, and especially ourselves, when we face it, then we're filled with like more love and compassion for ourselves, because we find confidence in facing our fears and the things that are hard or we feel ashamed of. All of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I'm more whole, right? It's like it comes back into more of who I really am, and I can accept myself. And so that underworld signature just really helped me to understand like the traumas and the things that I've been through have been challenging, but have been these like teachers ultimately trying to help me step into more empowerment, which is like a gift, right? Yeah.
I just want to add something too about, because as Sheridan was saying, Venus is traveling with the sun at the time that she's in the underworld, and it's anywhere from 60 to 90 days that she's in the underworld time when she's not retrograde. When she's retrograde, it's like really fast, 7 or 8 days, and then she comes back. So she goes from the evening sky to the morning sky really fast, and that's more like a metamorphic underworld, like a really fast shift. So this is the longer underworld where things are, it's like that death and rebirth process, that very powerful shamanic process that's taking place. And we're in that now until December, at the time of this recording. Well, so other ways that we can work with this to understand this is recognizing that the sun is the source. Without the sun, we would not have life on this planet. Without the sun, it's like it's representing the seasonal cycle. It's the kind of energy that's available to us at any point in the seasons of the cycle of the, the annual passage of the earth around the sun, even though we think that sun's going around us. It kind of looks that way, but anyway, so whenever a planet is with the sun, it's with the source. So it's sourcing something new. And this is something that I find really fascinating, in terms of, we can also work with this as, yes, we'll have to, we can have great intentions, and we will have to work with anything, you know, uh, in my priestess work, one of the things we were taught was, you set an intention, anything in the way of that intention, anything not aligned with that intention comes up to get cleared. And that can be hard work. That can be, oh, I have to surrender this. I have to let go of this. No. And you resist and you fight it, and it goes on, and it's more and more difficult. And then finally you go, okay, fine, I give up. And then you get to the empowerment that's intended, to the renewal that's intended as a result of that. So one of the things that's happening on October 22nd of 2022, love the 20, all the two numbers there,
Mm.
is is that, I'm celebrating my 16-year wedding anniversary with my husband Peter, and we got married in 2006 when Venus and Mars were with the sun at 29 degrees Libra, which is where Venus is going to be again on October 22nd of this year.
Wow.
So it's like a really precise Venus return. It's coming back to that, to that exact same relationship. Now Mars won't be there. Though interestingly, Mars is going out of bounds that day, so it's got some, and it's doing its little trickstery thing anyway. But every 32 years, based on the synodic cycles, every 32 years, Venus and Mars come back together. Now, the reason that we chose that date, Peter and I both had been married before, me twice, him once. And we decided to have a secret wedding. We decided that we didn't want anybody's opinions about how great it was we were getting married, or maybe secretly thinking, oh, whatever about marriage. Because if we've had bad experiences, then we might not have great opinions about being married. And that's okay. We just didn't want any of that involved in our wedding. So we had our officiant and our two witnesses, and that was it. Oh, and a dog. There was a dog there too. But we chose that date because it was just hours after a Libra new moon. Venus and Sun and Mars were conjunct in Libra, meaning they are off the world stage. So we were sourcing a new way of doing relationship.
Mhm.
Or that was not anything that had been done before. Like, we didn't want to have the old marriage paradigm of, oh, your best day of your marriage is when you get married. It goes downhill from there. Or, whatever whatever the perceptions have been about marriage. So we used that time and made commitments. We didn't make vows, we made commitments. We powerfully engaged that moment to create a new way of doing marriage and relationship and partnership and co-created, conscious, collaborative, the kinds of relationships that we so here we are coming up on 16 years. It's better than ever. it's
Mhm.
it's evolved in ways I couldn't have imagined. And knowing this, working with that was like, and making the choices that we made and we kept it secret for a year and a day because we wanted to set our own field of relationship without anybody's, you know, opinions, good or bad, whatever, to influence us in what we were creating. We were, because we did it with the time when Venus and Mars were conjunct the sun, the source. So to source a new way of doing that. So these are the kinds of things we can do when we really understand the synodic cycles, when we understand what's going on, and how we can work with the underworld as a time of creating something new, sourcing something new, because any planet with the sun is with the source, so it can be something new. Anyway, I thought I would share that just because, hey, here we are in this underworld time, and if anybody wants to work with that in a magical ceremonial way, because literally the high magic, and of course we also went to Sedona and got married
Mhm.
in Sedona. So it was, we picked a really sacred place. We picked a sacred time. We picked something that would align with our intentions.
Beautiful. It reminds me of in my prayers, I every day I go through this whole thing and I then ask at the end, I say, I am highest quantum source light. What is mine to do? And I get shown what is mine to do. So a lot of the time I'll get like taken out of this time space continuum and just exploded into infinity in the void of nothing. Okay. that's like typical for me. But also periodically I get taken through all of existence and straight into a ball of fire like a sun, but what I'm shown is, like source itself. And then so I go straight into this kind of sun-like ball of source, and it's like my entire identity, my entire energetic structure just gets incinerated back into the nothing and everything of that source fire. So it reminds me, I mean, totally of what you're saying with, yeah, any, Venus or Mars or whatever going into the underworld, joining with the sun. It's the same idea. And when I'm in that place in my praying, the point of it is exactly what you're saying. It's that they meaning the spirit world talking to me is saying, yeah, you need a reset. Like you need energetically to just remember this feeling of just being source and letting source take back over all of your cells, all of everything, re-become who you actually are, which is source itself, and then start again. Like press that off on button on the computer or whatever. Let's start over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that similar to what you're describing
Yeah,
there?
I think I feel like that is, and the planets. So from Mars out, they only meet with the sun once. Mercury and Venus meet with the sun twice, once while retrograde and once not retrograde.
Mm.
So, but they all meet with the sun. So they all have this opportunity to source something new. To and if we think about, the way that things have happened in our society, and as Sheridan was brilliantly pointing out, all the ways that we haven't really honored the divine feminine, and how ancient cultures worked with this cycle, the Venus cycle, as a way of honoring that journey, that initiation. And because I think there was a lot of fear that came up of the power of the feminine, it had to be repressed and suppressed. So I think working with the Venus cycle is giving us an opportunity to recognize, and this is true for men too. We have men join us, not as many as the women do, but and we're women, so we don't necessarily know how to speak to the men as well as we know how to speak to the women. But that a lot of men are finding this to be very valuable in terms of connecting to their inner feminine expression
Mhm.
that has been suppressed and repressed and denied by the patriarchal culture and the conditioning that we've all experienced. So this is a way we're reclaiming this collective, personally and collectively, ultimately, to have that and to recognize when a planet is with the sun, or especially right now as Venus is with the sun, we have an opportunity to source amazing things, whatever it is we would, nothing's impossible. And especially if we're coming from love, and especially if we're coming from a place of truly wanting to live in unity and harmony with all of life, and not be, trying to manipulate, control, and dominate it. So I feel like this cycle that we're in, this Capricorn cycle that we're in, the wisdom keepers, the elders, the grandmothers, the grandfathers, but if we're looking at Venus, it's the grandmothers and their wisdom that has been so repressed by our culture for such a long time. And in fact, in the United States, they were supposed to include the grandmothers, the wise women, as part of their makeup of government. Guess what didn't happen? And they
Yeah.
were told by the native people that they were modeling their constitution after. If they didn't, it was gonna end up in a mess. And guess what? It's ended up in a mess.
Yep.
So maybe now in this cycle, we have this opportunity. Interestingly, the United States is also going through a Pluto return right now as we're doing this cycle. It's like the wisdom of the women, the wisdom of the feminine needs to be honored and celebrated. And so as we have Venus with the sun and the source now until December, this might be something we want to contemplate and tune into and see how we can bring that more fully into our own personal lives as well as to our collective understanding.
Well, what's clicking for me just as you're saying this, interestingly, a couple weeks ago, I wrote the first draft of a short new book, and one of the chapters is about the importance of restoring our relationship to archetypes, etc. And I give Saturn as an example, and I say in there, I feel like if we as a collective just did one thing, which would be to change our relationship to the narrative around Saturn and Capricorn, we literally could change the world. If we took our relationship to Saturn / Capricorn from being about this idea of a domineering, patriarchal, authoritarian way of approaching the world to drop it down into a yin, perhaps feminine, gentle, holding energy, that wise woman holding the wise woman, the ancient wise woman in each of us, who knows exactly what we need on a very subtle, gentle level, and is there just to give us that precise, subtle, gentle holding that we need in every moment. I mean, really, I think the world would instantaneously change if we went from thinking, that this Capricorn energy is do this, now I'm going to crack the whip, to no, there's this inner gentle wisdom that we each are. I don't even know.
There's
Yeah.
also the wisdom of Capricorn about how to get the best results with the least amount of effort. And that it's not about working hard. It's not about all those things. And here's the other thing too, is that Saturn is always seen as a masculine god, but Saturn is really feminine. It's matter, it's mother, it's a feminine energy. It's about structure, it's about the form of this reality. And the feminine gives birth to the form. So it is not a masculine planet, it is a feminine planet, and we need to change its name, maybe.
Yeah, something.
And have it named after a goddess or something. I don't know, but I'm just thinking, I think about this a lot, and that because of the patriarchal sort of takeover, and the sort of taking Saturn and making it masculine, and also making it about domination, control, you know, punishment. Oh, you know, there's that God up in heaven. If you're doing the wrong thing, now you're gonna now you're gonna be punished harshly, and maybe sent to hell forever, or whatever those stories are that have been told around that. And so people are often living in so much fear that they could make a wrong move, or they're not doing the right thing, or I've often had these experiences myself where I've like, why does God hate me? Why is this happening? Why is this difficult? But when I started to understand, wait, this was difficult because I was hanging on to something I should have let go of a long time ago. That's why that was difficult. It wasn't that I was being punished. It was that I was just creating that misery for myself. And that once I understood it and I had a different perspective of it, and I gained the wisdom that helped me to let go or to see things in a new way. Wow. So this is the opportunity we have as Pluto's finishing its transit in Capricorn. We've got this Venus cycle that's happening with the Capricorn overarching theme, or we could say meta goddess, or however you want to say that, that's also happening right now. And she's in the underworld, and she's going through a death of these old ways of like hard work and, you know, punishment and all the things that we've had that have sort of driven our culture. And time to let it all go.
Yeah, well, it cannot be a coincidence that I just wrote that 2 weeks ago.
Perfect.
Yeah.
No, and I
Wow.
love that you brought that up, because there's, I mean, it's not even just Saturn, but Saturn is a great place to start, right?
Right.
It's like there's so much emphasis on like, this is bad and this is good, you know? And it's like that, I think, is like the crux of the problem, essentially. You know, it's like there's a lot of talk in, you know, more spiritual circles of like coming back to the unity, but then out of the side of our mouth, we're saying like, oh, the Saturn cycle, ooh, careful, good luck, you know, or Pluto, you know, it's like we're still making the polarity while we're espousing unity, right? And yes, we do live in a culture that polarity is still existing, but we're wanting to bring it back in, right? That's such a big part of Venus alchemy in my mind, is like bringing the feminine, elevating that, right? Bringing, you know, what's considered the bad side, right? If we're going to break up the polarity, right? Let's use like yin and yang, because those are less loaded terms for many of us than like masculine, feminine. But if we're making something bad, like if we make the dark bad, or we're making Saturn bad, we're making the yin is then the bad side of that polarity. And now we're just saying the feminine is bad still. And we're like propping up like the light and Jupiter, or, you know, just to use an example, is like the masculine, the yang is the good, right? It's like we're still making the separation constantly every time we make those choices. And I'm not saying I'm like so great at it or anything, but I'm trying to constantly keep catching myself. I feel like having so much of my chart with these like underworld themes, Venus in the underworld, that's part of, you know, why I'm here. That's part of my teacher. That's part of what teaches me that I can help bring forward. So I love that you brought that up, because I 100% agree with you. If we just shift that one thing, everything can change, because then that is the unity, right? We stop the pushing away and we start the bringing.
Finding the keystone that changes every, you know, it's like
Yes.
you take the keystone out, it could all collapse, but or you put the keystone in and it all comes together. So it's that, yeah, it's that
Yeah.
imagery comes to mind.
Maybe we need to do a whole summit just on changing our relationship to Saturn or something. Seriously, seriously. Not kidding.
I wrote an article years ago called "When Life Isn't Fair: A Saturn Story," because I was often saying it's just not fair. It's just not fair. And then I realized, wait a second. Oh, this is. And I was in the Saturn cycle at the time. I was like, oh, I get it now. So
Wow.
yeah, we could definitely do a lot around that.
Yeah. Well, and something else I just want to say real quick about that's coming to me as you guys are describing. There's the underworld, which happens to coincide with these planets being with the sun, right? And those seem contradictory. Like it seems like one is quote unquote bad, like you're going down, 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 down into hell. I mean, I'm obviously that's not what it actually means, but you could get that image, right? But you are going down, 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 layer by layer, shedding these layers of your identity, et cetera, on a storyline. But what is it that you get to? Well, in the way it's suddenly, because I was thinking, okay, these don't mix. There's some connection. Why am I not getting the connection? And then as you guys were just talking, I suddenly got it. At least here's my version of getting it. You guys tell me if it's the way you get it. But oh, of course, as you're going down, 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 what you get to is oneness with the sun, right? Like you get to the light, you get to this rejoining with source. So it's actually all the same, like the quote unquote bad journey, but it's not a bad journey. I'm not saying it's a bad journey. The thing we're scared of going down, down, down actually gets you to the most ecstatic, beautiful oneness with our source, our home, us, the divine. Is that how you guys experience it, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, completely. Right. I think of going to the underworld is going to the void, right? When you were talking about your going to the void, right? That is the underworld, is the void, right? And it's like, oh, wow, maybe we can't see. It's dark, not bad dark, but literally dark, right? And then all of a sudden you step into the void and it's like, just like you said, it's like you're held. It's the place of instantaneous healing. It is the place that is the center of the sun as well, right? The sort, right? All of that. It's the yin and yang. It's all like turning into the next and back to the last, So that's, yes.
Amazing.
That's a long answer.
Yeah, I had never gotten that aha until just now. Wow. Sorry, Cayelin, were you going to say something?
I think that it's a brilliant perspective that and it shifts our perspective. It's like we're making the descent, and you think about this, the stories of like Aladdin going into the underworld, and he's kind of tricked into doing it to get this magic lamp. And he's told there's jewels, there's treasures, there's everything in the underworld that we often forget about that part. It's like that's the place where the dead people hang out or whatever, right? So, but there's all these gems and jewels and things that are there, and the evil wizard is too afraid to go into the underworld because he can't face his dark side. He just can't do it. So he gets a young innocent child to go do it for him. And then when Aladdin comes back and Aladdin says, "Help me out of here, out of this, deep underworld place," and the wizard's like, "Nope, give me the lamp and then I'll help you out." And he's like, "Nope, help me out and then I'll give you the lamp." And then the wizard just pushes him back into the underworld, closes up the space and walks away. And Aladdin's now sitting there in the dark space, but he has a magic lamp. And this is something I think of our genie within us. It's like, how are we going to get access to it? We got to go to the underworld to get there.
Wow.
So then he's like, wait, I've got this lamp. And he starts trying to figure, it's like, I can find another way out. And so he rubs the lamp and the genie comes out and says, "Hey, what do you want?" And then he's, it's like, but he's accessing his inner genius is what's going on. So this is another way to look at the underworld time, is like, this is us getting into that deeper sense of who we really are. No distractions. We're not in the world of light necessarily. We're not in the place of where it's easy to just like go watch TV or do something that's distracting. It's like, no, this is the time. And if we take advantage of it and choose it, we can contact that inner genius within us and have it, or genie, I like to call it the inner genie, have it help us figure out how we are going forward, how we're going to get out of the world of dark back to the world of light, but bringing the two together. It's like, it's not either or. It's not the world of dark is bad. It's where we can find the treasures. And the world of light is often where we find the distractions. So, but it's also the place that we, as humans, we need to live in this place too. So anyway, I don't know. I hope that's a helpful imagery, because I just feel like it really helps me a lot to go, oh, going into the underworld, we're going into the place where we can find all the treasures.
I love that. No, that's an amazing image. I love that story. I'm going to use that as well. And like, just to distill what you're saying, Martha, it's like, I think the underworld is the place of pure love. And I think source is the place of pure love, right? Both. They're both, right?
And the other thing is that, you know, if we can't look at the sun for very long, we can sun gaze and build up our ability to look at it for a while. I've done that. But it's like being blinded by the light. It's so bright you can't see. So the underworld could be that it's dark because it's so light.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So cool. Okay, unless there's something else you want to touch on that you haven't yet, I'm wondering if you guys want to give us the rundown of what Venus Alchemy actually does. You touched on it, but here and now, we're recording this in September 2022. So for people listening, what would you like them to know about what you actually offer? How does that look? How does that work? How does that feel? Anything you want to say?
We have a couple things that we offer. One is the ceremonial journey with Venus. And so you get a very visceral experience in community of that ceremonial journey. And then, it's a 19-month journey. Some people just do Morning Star, some people just do Evening Star. We'll be starting our Evening Star journey in December. And we don't have it all set up. Oh, actually, we do have the landing page, I think. Yeah. So we can maybe send that to you so you can put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
But then a new Venus cycle will start in August of 2023. So if people want to start from the beginning and go through that cycle with us, you're welcome to do that. We also have something called the Venus Signature series, and that is getting an understanding. So it's not just the sign your Venus is in, because that gives us information clearly, but that's just part of it. It's like, what phase of the Venus cycle? Are you a morning star? Add fire. Are you an evening star? Add earth. Are you an underworld? Add water. Are you a metamorphic underworld? Add air. Like we add, it adds. And so for example, I have Venus in Aries, but she's an evening star. So she's not as hell bent on getting somewhere as she would be if she was a morning star. And that understanding really helped me a lot, because I'm like, sometimes I don't really get my Aries, but but when I put those two things together, it's like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. It's like Sheridan talking about her underworld Venus. Now she gets it. Now she understands what that's about. There's also other factors like what sign the sun is in, what sign, so what ascendant do you have? What outer planets do you have to Venus? Those all represent a signature to your feminine expression. And so we lead people through figuring out how to understand that at a deeper level, and to really come up with, like one of the things we do at the very end is have them come up with an intention or a statement that describes their Venus signature. It's really fun.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if people want to do that, we're probably going to reinvent that a little bit. It needs some updating and some things with it, but we'll keep people posted on that. And for now, it's like people have really had an amazing experience with that.
Yes, I've heard from many people who have done it, who have had an amazing experience.
Cool.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So life changing for me. In Evening Star, I'm also at the throat chakra gate of Venus, and the biggest challenge I've had is reclaiming my voice, because I literally, when I was growing up, I was very discouraged from speaking. My parents would tape my mouth shut because they said I talked too much.
What?
Yeah, and I developed an irrational fear of speaking in front of people. So I have really worked through that, but understanding that was my gate made it just, lights went off, and like, oh, now I get it. Yeah. So so there's so many cool things you can learn about from your Venus signature that goes way beyond the sign that Venus is in.
Super cool.
We're also going to have we're going to do a free webinar coming up in October while Venus is in the underworld, about the underworld and just the Venus journey. So if it's something that you're interested in and you want to check out, that's a easy way to just tap in and check it. You could just follow me or Cayelin or check on our Venus Alchemy stuff. you'll find
Sign
them.
up for our newsletter or something if you want to get notified when we're going to be sending something out about that, hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Cool. And can you just name each of your websites, the joint one plus each of your own?
So venusalchemy.com is our main website for Venus Alchemy. My website has two URLs. One is CayelинCastell.com. Now, a lot of times people don't know how to spell my name and whatever. So I also have celestialtimings.com if that's easier to get to.
Sheridan.
Mine's just my name, SheridanSemple.com.
Awesome. I'll link all of that. And then you both each also do readings and your own offerings separately, individually too, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And Cayelin, you have My Star Alchemy also.
Yes, I have My Star Alchemy.
Yeah.
And Sheridan has her aromatherapy.
Okay.
It's brilliant. And one of the things that's been really fun to integrate into Venus Alchemy as we've been going forward is the whole way of bringing in the plants and the medicine of the plants into each gate and all of that. So yeah, that's been super fun.
Thank you.
Sounds so cool. Yes, all of it, all of the above. Wonderful. I really appreciate what you're doing in the world and who you are, more than anything, who you each are. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, I really, really honor and value the integrity that I feel in each of you and the true love. We're talking about love before we started, and yes,
And they say it takes one to know one. So
yes.
yes.
Awesome.
And you're another myself, so you know.
You're what? I'm another.
You're another myself, or I'm another yourself.
Oh,
that's a Mayan. Oh God, I keep trying to think of it. In Lakesh, I am another yourself. So, or we're all a self of each other. You know, we're all a part. We're just different reflections of each other. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to say before we end?
No, just thank you so much. It's so nice to be here with you, with both of you. Yeah.
So much fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.